Welcome to Food and Facilities, an online show and podcast for all safety, compliance, and innovation news for manufacturing, agriculture, food processing, and food and beverage industries. In this episode, we're discussing fermentation-based proteins with Keller and Heckman LLP and agribusiness policy in the Central Valley with Lourin Hubbard for Congress and District 22. Welcome to Food and Facilities. I'm Tara Sweeney. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts, and follow us on LinkedIn. Make sure to reach out to our sponsor, facilitiesexpo.com. They will have a Central Valley Facilities Expo August 4th to 5th, Southern California Facilities Expo August 18th to 19th, and a Northern California Facilities Expo October 27th to 28th. For exhibiting information and questions, you can contact Lisa Nagel at lnagle@facilitiesexpo, facilitiesexpo.com, or you can give her a call at 408-829-5111. The Facilities Expo, where facility challenges find solutions. My next guests are subject matter experts from Keller and Heckman LLP. Make sure to reach them at khlaw.com or khlaw.com. I'm here with my guests, Eve Polonis, Connie Potter, and Natalie Rayner of Keller and Heckman LLP, and they're here to discuss fermentation-based proteins. Can you give a little introduction of yourselves and Keller and Heckman for our readers and listeners?
Sure. Thanks, Tara. This is Eve Polonis. I'm a partner in the Washington, D.C. office at Keller and Heckman. I've been practicing food law for approximately 18 years or so. And so we're happy to present today on fermentation-based proteins. We're entering an interesting time with food, with lots of different new technologies emerging. So this is just one of those interesting technologies. So look forward to speaking more with you.
Hi, Tara. My name is Connie Potter. I'm an associate at Keller and Heckman in the Washington, D.C. office, and I assist both Eve and Natalie joining us here today on direct food matters. So helping out manufacturers with labeling concerns and the regulatory status of direct food ingredients.
Thanks. Hi, Tara. This is Natalie Rayner. I'm a partner in our San Francisco office and have been in the food law arena for about 13 years now, and have been getting more and more requests from clients interested in bringing fermentation-based foods to market. So I'm really excited about this area and excited to talk to you today about our article.
So for our viewers and listeners that aren't aware of what a fermentation-based protein is, can you give us a little definition of that?
Sure, happy to. So fermentation has been used in the food industry for quite a long time. It's historically, the traditional use of fermentation was microbial fermentation. So that would be where you just use live, intact microorganisms to produce raw materials into other food products. So to process raw materials into other food products. So for example, when you take lactic acid bacteria, you can convert milk into cheese and yogurt. So we're not, that's historically what fermentation has been used in as, how it's been used in the food industry. What we're talking about now are newer ways of using fermentation to produce food ingredients. So we've got things like biomass fermentation, and that's where you are producing protein from microorganisms that grow rapidly to produce the high protein microorganism-based food ingredients. Second way fermentation is now being used is precision fermentation. And this is where things get kind of interesting, because here what we are seeing is where you're using microorganisms to produce specific ingredients. So you're isolating proteins for use as food ingredients, and then often removing the production organism. And what's interesting with all of this is it enables companies to make either identical or substantially identical proteins that are that are not animal derived, but that are the same as an animal derived protein. So whereas this is exciting because it raises the availability of these proteins from a non-animal source, it also raises some interesting safety and labeling issues that my colleagues will discuss in the next part of this interview, I believe.
It's a great segue. So what are some of the safety concerns with fermentation-based proteins?
Yeah, hi, this is Connie. So I'm happy to discuss a couple of the key considerations that manufacturers getting into this space would want to consider. So there are three primary areas of safety concern that manufacturers will be looking at when they're looking to get a fermentation-based food approved. The first and the most important is the safety of the production organism. So to consider the safety of the production organism used to produce the protein, it's going to be a lot easier for manufacturers to show its safety if that organism has a long history of safe use in food, or if it's the subject of published safety data. But for organisms that don't have as long a history of safe use in food, or that they're going to need to generate additional safety data to show the safety of the production organism that doesn't have a long history of safe use in food. They're going to want to consider the allergenicity or the pathogenicity of the production organism. In addition to showing the safety of the production organism, manufacturers will also want to consider the safety of the target protein that's being used for the food. For proteins produced via precision fermentation, manufacturers will most easily be able to support the safety of that protein when it's identical to a conventional counterpart, for instance, a protein that's already commonly used in food, rather than a protein that's different than that conventional counterpart. But if a manufacturer does need to show similarity or to show that one protein is similar to a conventional counterpart, the manufacturer is going to use both a structural assessment or a nutritional assessment to show that the two proteins are similar and that both are safe for use in food. And then the final safety component that manufacturers want to consider is the safety of the fermentation media used. That's the substance that's fed to the microorganisms. And we'll also just want to ensure that every component of that substance is safe.
And for producers that want to start making fermented-based proteins, what are some labeling considerations that they would have to look into?
Thanks, Tara. This is Natalie. This is one of the trickier and more interesting parts of evaluating these types of food products. So we're entering this precision fermentation protein world where you can make, for example, a milk protein without a cow. So how do we communicate with consumers, particularly about proteins that are identical to the major 8 food allergens? So things like proteins that are identical to milk protein or egg protein. It's an interesting issue, particularly because in the current market, we've got plant-based alternatives to some of these products, like plant-based alternatives to eggs and plant-based alternatives to milk that are side by side now with fermentation-based milk proteins that have allergenicity concerns that are not relevant to those plant alternative counterparts. So it is a challenge for these precision fermentation products to both distinguish themselves from their conventional counterparts, but to also make sure that the consumer has a clear understanding, particularly about the potential allergenicity issues. There aren't federal rules at this point for how to label fermentation-based proteins in a different way. The same rules apply to fermentation-based foods that apply to other food ingredients. You're supposed to use the common or usual name for the product. But when we're talking about such innovative products, it can be difficult to know what the appropriate common or usual name is. But in the absence of federal standards on these nomenclature issues, a number of states have passed laws prohibiting the use of traditional dairy and meat terms for non-animal derived products that include fermentation derived products. So just as these state rules would prevent a plant-based burger from being able to use the term meat in the name, those same rules would seek to prevent fermentation derived identical proteins from using terms like meat or milk as well. There has been an interesting case in California where the California Department of Food and Agriculture, CDFA, brought an enforcement action against a plant-based butter, which was marketing itself as a vegan butter. And CDFA said that this company, Miyoko's Kitchen, could not use the term butter on its label. And Miyoko's Kitchen sued CDFA and actually won the case because the judge agreed that the term vegan was sufficient to communicate to consumers that the vegan butter was not produced using milk. So that was a win for the fermentation-based industry as well, even though Miyoko's Kitchen is producing a plant-based product, because the same reasoning could be used to support that appropriate terminology to adjust or amend a reference to a conventional protein would be sufficient to communicate to the consumer that it's not actually from, for example, a cow or from a chicken. So again, this is such an innovative area of food technology that there's a lot of gray areas currently, and I expect that over the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot more consumer education, a lot more consumer understanding that's going to help everyone understand the difference better between conventional proteins, plant-based alternatives to those proteins, and then fermentation-based proteins that are identical to conventional proteins.
And if our viewers and listeners wanted to get in contact with you to seek legal counsel, how would they best reach you?
Yeah, we are all, our contact information is available on our website, which is khlaw.com. So K for Keller, H for Heckman, law.com. Our email addresses and phone numbers are there. And you can also sign up for our daily intake blog on our website, where we do updates on current events 5 days a week.
And you have some upcoming events available. Can you share those with our viewers and listeners?
We have in October our annual food packaging law seminar, which is going to be taking place in Arlington, Virginia from October 18th to 20th. On that first day, October 18th, we're going to be talking about sustainability considerations for food packaging. And then on October 19th and 20th, we're going to focus on the regulation of food packaging materials. So not so much the labeling, but actually the composition and FDA regulation of food packaging materials. So if that's of interest, more information is available on our website.
Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to sharing more of your information with our viewers and listeners.
Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Tara.
Hey, Tara.
Make sure to reach them at khlaw.com or khlaw.com. My next guest is running for Congress in District 22. Reach him at lourinhubbard.com. That's LOURINHUBBARD.com. I'm here with my guest, Lourin Hubbard, and he's running for District 22 in Clovis, California. Full disclosure, Lourin and I are friends, and even though I know you, can you share a little bit about yourself for our viewers and listeners?
Certainly. So my name is Lourin Hubbard, now originally from Bakersfield. Came up to Fresno in about 2007 as a doe-eyed freshman at Fresno State and completed my degree in political science and have really been in the field of public service ever since graduation. I started with the Department of Social Services here for Fresno County for a time and switched over to the state level, where now I work as the operations manager at the Water Resources Control Board.
What are some problems that you've noticed in agribusiness in your district?
I think there's a couple of issues that I've noticed, especially facing agribusiness in this district. The biggest one that I can think of right now is the consolidation of agribusiness and these ag monopolies that are really decreasing competition. And we have this issue now where the number of farms that we have in our area have decreased, but the need for food production is only going to increase. And so I think we need to recognize that agriculture is the backbone of this district. And when I'm out talking to people about how our farms are being squeezed and on the inputs and the output side, it's one of these issues that I think resonates with people across the board, across the political spectrum. I think we need to move to address the growing power of agribusiness monopolies, which are causing these rising prices on what farmers buy and pushing down prices on what they sell. And if you look at some of the statistics from like the 1980s, for example, American consumers, for every dollar that American consumers spent on food, 37 cents of every dollar went back directly to farmers. In 2019, where we have the latest data, 2019, farmers made less than 15 cents on every dollar. So the difference is really starting to show. And I think that we need to recognize that those dollars that are not being put back to farmers are not circulating in our community. So that's one thing. Another thing that I feel is very, very important, and we are feeling the effects of it, and it's only going to get worse, are addressing climate change in a meaningful way. The drought that we are currently in, we just got out of one a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. That lasted a number of years. By now the science is settled on that. There's consensus in the scientific community, and we have to recognize that the economic impact of drought has an effect on our economy. UC Davis did a study that was out in 2020 on the economic effects of the last drought, and found that our Central Valley communities lost $3 billion directly due to drought-related stunting of economic growth. If we're going to solve this problem of climate change, I think it is imperative that we never go about vilifying an entire sector like I've heard some folks do. Our people across the aisle, for me as a Democrat in this area, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at Republicans and conservatives, because it affects us all. And I think that what we need to be focusing on is making farmers in this situation, they'll be the salvation that this country's environmental problems. We should incentivize and reward farmers that are doing best practices for sustainability, and reward them for making the effort to sequester carbon and greenhouse gases. So that's two of the big issues, I think, for me when it comes to agribusiness in this.
How do you intend to solve or alleviate these issues with your platform?
It's a good question. I think what we need to do, and there's already existing legislation for some of these things, and we need to support them, is promote sustainable agriculture by providing financial support and incentives to farmers to adopt climate-friendly techniques and practices is one thing. Federal dollars are going right now to a lot of these big farms. 77% of all federal subsidies are going to farms that are generating $500 million or more. Or it's very small, 17% of that is going to these small and medium-sized family farms and not on these industrial levels. So I think we need to do that. One thing, the federal government can focus those dollars to make a greater impact. We can build regional food supply chains that increase access and distribution to markets for our small and medium-sized farms. When we widen the availability of fresh, healthy, locally grown produce to nearby communities, those dollars again are circulated in our communities, and we're benefiting the people that live in those communities. And then another thing, which is imperative, especially because it's something that the federal government can do. And again, when it comes to that synergy of people helping people, when we're talking about agriculture in this area, we have a lot of people, especially in the west side of the district here, Fresno especially, but our South Valley have or what we call food deserts. And it's really something that is, you would think, it couldn't be the case. You know, the Central Valley is the world salad bowl, where 70+% of the agriculture that people are eating around the world comes from here. But there's places in our district where people can get fresh produce. So we need to expand our supplemental nutritional assistance program, or SNAP or food stamp benefits, to include the use of organic products and support organic farms and grow that market to allow everybody to have the healthiest food available and focus on regenerative, sustainable, organic ag practices.
Do you have anything additional that you'd like to share?
I think what I would like people to take away is that we have a plan in our campaign running for Congress here in the 22nd Congressional District. We have a plan to not only help our farmers, but on the other side, we're going to help folks have money in their pockets to buy produce from our farmers. That's the big thing here, is making those investments in not only sustainability on the farming side, but also on the people that are going to buy the produce, and have that synergy go full speed. So I hope everyone, if you are taking a listen to this, watching this at home, and you're getting interested in what we have going forward as a plan, that you'll check out my website at www.lourinhubbard.com. That's LOURINHUBBARD.com. And check out some of the platforms that we're going, not only for sustainability in agriculture, but also advancing causes and investments in education through community college and vocational training for folks, and also bringing in Medicare for all in this valley.
Do you have any campaign events coming up?
We are looking at doing some campaign events in the South Valley for early August. It has been quite hot, as you can imagine. I think we set a record the other day at 114 degrees here. So we are looking at trying to do some ice cream socials or something that we can get out there and beat the heat. So be on the lookout for those. You can sign up on our website for email blasts that come out with our events.
Thank you for joining me, Lourin. And if you have any questions for Lourin, make sure to reach him at lourinhubbard.com.
Thanks for having me.
Watch us live on centralvalleytalk.com Saturdays 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for all agribusiness safety and compliance news covering agriculture, food processing, food and beverage, and manufacturing. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and anywhere you listen to podcasts, and follow us on LinkedIn. We will now have a moment of silence for our Black Lives Matter community.